Good. So yeah, welcome. I'm Dominic Ackland. I'm part of the Connecting the Colne team, and this is a first meeting in a long time for the Water Quality Working Group. We had a series of meetings a few years ago, and we're just picking up the threads on this again. So thanks for coming along today. Can we do a round of introductions? Just sort of say briefly who you are, where you live, and what your interest is. I'll go around the screen in order. Tim, you're first.
Okay, well, my name's Tim Burt. I live in Sanford Peveril. I'm a retired professor of geography from Durham, and I spent a career looking at hydrology and water quality. So hence an interest locally. And I sample the Stratford stream for you once a month.
Thank you very much. Mike, you're next. I just need to unmute Mike.
That's better. Yeah, so I'm just a local resident and interested in what's going on, really, and on the recent problems that they've been having down at the bridge near and on the Colne with the sewage system down there, and that's it, really.
That's great. Okay, thank you very much. John. John, can you hear us? Okay, we'll come back to John. He's not there at the moment. Anthony, you're next. Anthony's also not there at the moment. I'll come back to both of you. Sean.
Hi, my name's Sean Webber. I work for the North Devon Biosphere on the Devon Woods project. I'm getting feedback here.
It's terrible feedback. Can everybody just turn off their microphones? Apart from Sean.
Yes, so the Devon Woods project, which is looking to create woodland throughout Devon in some target catchments for water quality, well, partly for water quality improvements, and the Colne is one of those catchments. I live in Honiton, if anyone's interested. So I'm not in the catchment, but I'm not too far away.
That's great. It's good to have you along, and we've got some slides from you in a minute as well, which would be great to have. Lucy, you're next.
Hi. Is that unmuted? Yeah. Yes. Hi, I'm Lucy Jefferson. I'm the Colne Catchment Officer working with Dominic on the Connecting the Colne project. I currently work using a pot of money from Devon County Council called the Devon Resilience Innovation Project, paying for nature-based solutions across 6 catchments, which I think Dominic has got a map of later. I am also a resident and I live in the High Bollum part of the Colne.
Thanks, Lucy. Richard next.
Hello, I'm Richard Horrocks. I live in Sanford Peveril, and I'm the chairman of the Colne Fly Fishing Club, which fishes between Comstock and Hemioch. I also undertake Riverfly surveys and have done for the last 10 years or so, coordinating the whole of the ex-catchment, but with particular interest on the Colne, being my local river. And recently I've been doing CSI surveys as well. So I've been measuring the water quality following the CSI methodology.
Great, thank you, Richard. And we've got some data hot off the press as of this afternoon from Richard to discuss later. And Teresa. Sorry, did I mute myself? Teresa, you're next, yes.
Hello, hi there. Yeah, I'm Teresa Pointing. So I'm an Ofcombe resident and landowner in the Calne Valley, nearish, between Calmstock and Ash Hill. We do small scale horticulture and natural burials, and I'm just very interested in this topic. Afraid I don't have any great expertise, but just willing to learn and interested.
That's great, Teresa. You're going to have to be very sharp on the unmuting yourself. Because it's causing the echo, certainly that I can hear, a very bad echo. Seems to happen when your mic is open. So I'm going to make sure to be very quiet when your mic's open. And then if you can mute it when you're...
I'll stay mute as much as possible.
That's a shame in many ways, because I know you're a long-standing partner with Connecting the Calne. You've done great work in the first phase of the project. But yeah, do dive in whenever you want. I'll just make sure to mute myself when that happens. Thanks. And John, can you hear us at all? Are you with us so far? No? Okay. Looks like that's us for the time being then. So I've prepared a bit of a presentation, and I'll just... Oh, John is here putting his hand up. Go, John, go. We can't hear you. Yeah, I don't know what to do about that, but it sounds like maybe you can put something in the chat, John, about who you are, and that will help us.
Sorry, I think John's muted, according to his...
I know. So it doesn't matter. We'll move on, but hopefully he can comment through the chat. So I'm just going to share my screen now and go straight into Riverfly and over to Richard, really, because he's been, as he said, is in charge of Riverfly and has been making all this wonderful stuff happen. And this is this year's results.
Right, thank you, Dominic. Yes, you can see the table in front of you, I hope, which is a summary of the results for this last year, 2023. The first thing to point out is that the weather was quite difficult this year. As you'll all recall, we had a cold spring followed by a very hot, dry period in the summer, and with very low flows, followed by very high flows in the autumn, which is the period pretty well the end of September. And unfortunately, a number of our volunteers got caught out by that very heavy rain we had in the middle of September, which put the river levels to an unsafe height to survey. So we have a bit of missing data. Nevertheless, you can see we have got quite a few results from quite a few sites, and there are 12 active sites along the Calne and its tributaries. I'll just point out a few things. The numbers may not mean much to you, but basically it's an aggregate score based on survey of 8 invertebrate groups that live in the river. So we undertake kick sampling, and then we look to see what we find and look for 8 particular groups and count the numbers in those groups. And from that, we can derive a score which gives an overall indication of, if you like, the invertebrate well-being of the river. It is a snapshot. It is not as scientific as the Environment Agency would do, but it's remarkably resilient and a very good indicator. The yellow, unfortunately, are surveys that fell below the trigger level, which is set by the Environment Agency for them to be alerted. In other words, it's an alarm level, and it basically should never go to that level. Most surveys should be comfortably above that. And if that level is reached, then volunteers undertake follow-up surveys just to check that they are correct. So we can be confident that with all those low scores, they found very little in the way of invertebrate life in the river. 10 out of the 30 readings that we took on the Calne fell below that level, which is the worst that I've ever seen, and is quite worrying. The other thing that I would point out by way of contrast is if you look at the survey results from upstream of Hemioch on the Colne, you'll see 1916-12. Survey results in the upper teens are typical and expected above Hemioch. As soon as you fall below Hemioch, and we look, the next one down is Whitehall, we go from 19 to 9, and we go from 16 down to 5, and 12 down to 5 again. And that's in a relatively short distance, not much more than a mile and a half at most. And the same is true of the other major tributary which joins above Hemioch, which is the Madford stream, the Madford River rather. And you'll see there we had scores of 18, 17 and 12. So there is something happening below Hemioch which isn't happening above Hemioch, which is a concern to say the least. So there you see the results. They're getting worse as you go further down. We're also getting very high numbers of gammarus, which are the freshwater shrimp. So these aren't insects, they're a crustacea. In themselves, they're not a bad thing. They don't like heavily polluted water, but they are an indicator, if in large numbers, of high organic matter in the water. And the river below Killerton and the Spratford stream, which joins at Killerton, contain very little other than gammarus. If you take a typical sample, say around Comstock, we might find 100, maybe a few more insects in the survey. That would be typical. Above Hemioch, it might be a few hundred, but 100 or so is typical for much of the Colne. When you get down below Killerton, you get virtually no insects at all, and the gammarus can be measured in thousands. So it's gammarus soup down there, and scores or counts of gammarus of 2,000 or 3,000 in a KICS sample are not unusual, and an indicator that all is not well, that there is not a balanced ecology in those parts of the river. So it's not a very it's not a very good set of results, I'm afraid. Partly it could be due to weather, but not entirely by any means, because parts of the river have survived and held up very well. So I shall leave it there, really.
Thanks, Richard. I should have said to, that I'll circulate Richard's document, which has got full commentary on this after the meeting. And here's Anthony back. Anthony, welcome back.
Hiya.
All working this time. Well done. Sorry you missed that little bit. I was just saying I'll circulate the Riverfly report that Richard's produced, and he's also produced another report that we're coming on to, which to discuss, and I'll also circulate that. Anthony, you missed all of us introducing ourselves briefly, just saying who we are, where we're from, where we live, or where we work, or what our interest is in the river. Could you chip in with that?
Yeah, not a problem. Apologies. Yeah, I was logged in with my work email as opposed to my personal email, which you've communicating with. So that was the problem that I finally got.
I get that problem too.
Yeah. I'm a local resident. I'm sort of got two hats really. I'm a local resident. I live in Bradninch, so interested obviously in the local area, but also in my professional life, I'm a wetland designer and creator for the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group. And so I design wetlands for a living and have, an interest in watercourses throughout the whole of the southwest. And so I feel I should at least have some interest in my own doorstep as much as I do have in other parts of the southwest region. So I'm just interested I'm sort of seeing what's going on really. I'm not sure what I have to offer, but I'm just keen to listen into what's happening locally.
That's great. Thank you. Welcome. So Richard's just going to give us a bit of a bleak assessment of Riverfly results for the river. The next One part of his report was phosphate monitoring that you've been doing. Richard, do you just want to comment on that? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go.
Yeah, got that now. Yes, I don't know. There may be others who undertake the CSI surveys. This is run by the West Country Rivers Trust and is, again, a citizen method, rather like the Riverfly, but this time it's much more focused on the water quality rather than the life in the river. And there are a number of tests that are undertaken: temperature, turbidity, total dissolved solids, and phosphate, which is the one I've concentrated on here, partly because phosphates are associated with agriculture and with sewage in the river. Some of that is unavoidable because not everything is treated out, as it were, during water treatment, given the lives we lead these days. But it's a very good indicator of the general water quality health. And you may know that the River Culm already, and for many years, has failed the Water Framework Directive on phosphates. And these results were taken in this current year. They were all taken by myself. And so some of the sites are, these sites are the same as the ones I do for Riverfly, so I do them at the same time. And you'll see that Whitehall, which is, if you don't know, it's halfway between Comstock and Hemyock, we're getting scores 400 and above, which I'm no water quality expert, but I believe that's certainly somewhere between moderate and poor, tending towards the poor end of the spectrum. Spratford Stream, possibly even higher on occasions. We've got a high of 470 parts per billion there. The Sheldon Stream is a small tributary which comes in at Craddock, and we've got lower scores there with a very good score of 30 in the autumn this time. And that's the kind of score in the tens that we should be getting along the whole river. When I've surveyed upstream of Hemyock, again, I get scores of under 100. So the same factors, presumably, that are affecting the Riverfly are linked to high levels of phosphate below Hemyock. Unfortunately, again, I'm not a water quality expert. It would be nice if somebody was who could add some knowledge to those bare numbers about just how bad that is and what the cause might be.
Thanks, Richard. Excellent. And I think this is something that Richard and I have discussed, and we know, I think it's going to come out of the next slide as well, is about understanding what sort of thresholds. I mean, like Riverfly has got these trigger points which provide a very useful kind of threshold for understanding the numbers. But for CSI, there often doesn't seem to be that amount of information about what's alarming. West Country Rivers Trust does do a report card for each catchment where it's got surveyors operating. Tim, did you say you're a CSI surveyor? You're muted. No, still muted.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was busy looking at some result sheets and spreadsheets, and so
okay, sorry,
I had to get myself back online. Yes, I am. I was just looking at. I do the Spratford Stream down by Tiverton Parkway, and the results there have been as high as 500. Not always that high, and indeed sometimes the results are 0, which might be a flow-related thing, but. I think the big question is trying to identify whether this is diffuse runoff from fields and from the land area, or whether it's point source inputs from sewage treatment. And that probably, to understand that, needs quite a detailed survey working in detail along the stream. And I've been meaning to get Richard to go out with his, I think he's got a meter that can do these things, and as well as the CSI procedure, and just do a very detailed survey to see what things look like along a transect.
Yeah, well, that's something we might come back to. Okay, so moving on, this is there's a sonde at Killerton. A sonde is a water quality measuring device. It takes readings every 15 minutes. It's powered by solar panel, I think, and it was Lucy is shaking her head. Powered by batteries.
Yeah, they're batteries actually, Dominic.
Okay.
Lithium.
Yeah.
Lithium batteries.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
No, great. Thank you for the correction. And it was installed through the Connecting the Colne project about 2 years ago, and has been operating since. But Richard's recently got back into the system, which allows us to download data, and he's done a quick analysis on it. And this is back to the thing that this is what the data says, but we don't know what conductivity level is critical. But what I did do, just a quick internet search, looking at that dissolved oxygen figure of 2.83, which was obviously in a period of very hot weather. When you look at these air temperature figures here, water temperature figures here, dissolved oxygen dropped to 2.83, and I just read on the internet that fish cannot survive for long in water with dissolved oxygen less than 5 milligrams a litre. So these sort of temperatures are potentially triggering fish deaths, and it's not just the temperatures. The amount of oxygen in the water is affected by how much pollution is in the water, because if there's too much organic matter in the water, as that decomposes, it uses oxygen. So it's kind of pollution indicator as well as a temperature indicator. I think what we need is expert guidance on what this means, how to interpret this data. Is that right, Richard?
Yes, Dominic, I would agree. I'm happy to plough through the data. I mean, there are vast amounts. It's something like 1,000 readings every single day. So it does require a lot of work just to sort them out into something more useful. But having done that, which I've done, and Dominic's put up here a sample from a much larger set of data. What we need desperately is someone who understands water quality issues and is independent, who can advise us quite what the implications are of all these readings. I think the oxygen is a good one to look at, because I think we all intuitively know that as the temperature rises, the oxygens reduce, and of course, because at the same time the flows are lower, it means that any pollutants in the water are concentrated. So you get a sort of triple whammy almost, and you can get these very low levels. But we do need desperately some expert advice on what these mean. Otherwise, there's no point in processing the data, frankly, unless we know how to use it. The other thing I would just add is, with a little more time, it would be possible to look at some of these data side by side, because they're interrelated, and things like river level and rainfall can also be looked at the same time, and that might add some insight. The one I would really love to have is data from the water company as to their discharges, because that might tell a story as well. And that's one of the issues I wanted to raise today, is to see, given that South West Water claims to be a partner and supporter of the Connecting the Colne project, I would have hoped it was reasonable for them to share with us their data for the Colne, so that we can do this work alongside or with the help of a suitably qualified expert who can make sure we're doing it correctly.
Yes, thank you. And when we had, I've come to you in a minute, Lucy, but just briefly, we had Professor Hammond from what's the project called? River Windrush, where they'd analysed the dry spill problem, where water company was discharging during low flow when there wasn't any rainfall to justify discharges, and they managed to crunch the data to demonstrate that. But Yes, well, more sure we'll come back to that issue. Lucy.
Yeah, so there is a PhD student working on all of the sonde data in the Killerton sonde and the sonde network that is in the Ken. A lady called Ellie, and they come down and they check all the data. They check the sondes probably every 6 weeks, check the batteries, change the batteries. I can't remember off the top of my head the title of her PhD, but she's all over this data. So maybe she should come to one of these meetings and explain what she's up to.
That would be really welcome. Holly Pearson at WRT mentioned her and another PhD student to us, and I said we really want to link up with them, and also offered myself and Richard to help physically maintain the sonde, because apparently the turbidity sensor has got all mucked up. They haven't had any good turbidity readings for a while.
Can I just ask can I just ask where Ellie is based, and do we know who the PhD supervisor is, please?
Yes, she is based at the University of Bristol, and her supervisor is Professor Liz Bagshaw.
Thank you.
Liz was at Cardiff, but she is now at Bristol. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We've also got a few PhD students from the DRIP project that will be using probably the Ken data, so we can get them sort of looking at that. And I think, I can't remember off the top of my head what Ellie's thesis is called, but she's definitely water sampling and then cross-referencing it with the sonde data.
Brilliant. I mean, have you got her details?
Yeah.
So that we'll get in touch with her and get a discussion going, because sounds invaluable. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to move on so we get through our agenda. I'm just going to brief you on this National Highways project that's running at the moment. So Connecting the Colne secured funding for this project from the National Highways. They've got a environment fund to try and improve their environmental performance, and it's got two aims. One is to tackle two high-risk outfalls from the N5 into the Colne. These are drains taking water off the road, and it's just going straight into the Colne. And they use modelling to try and work out which outfalls are the highest risk of causing pollution. They don't actually go and measure the water quality at those outfalls, but they look at how many vehicles are going past, how much they're braking, how much pollutants they're likely to shed at that point, and how much area of tarmac is draining into that outfall. And then they work out which ones are the most likely to be causing problems. So there are two high-risk outfalls that this project's tackling. But the other one, which is possibly a sort of broader impact, is looking at installing nature-based solutions to improve water quality across the wider catchment. So we're just in this feasibility stage now, which finishes in January, and we'll then apply for detailed design. If we're successful with that, we'll be able to really drill down into a detailed design for the outfalls, and also for working across some priority catchments, looking at water quality. And then we apply again, and if we're successful again, we're looking at a multi-year programme, probably with about £1 million to invest to deliver the works that have been designed. So this slide shows the location of these two high-risk outfalls. So just to locate these for you, this one is on the junction just before the Tiverton exit, just before the railway station, and it goes into the Stratford. And this one is just on the edge of the catchment, but it flows onto National Trust land at Killerton. So we've got a very friendly landowner at Killerton. The landowners here are also happy to engage and do stuff to improve the water quality. So we're talking there about installing wetlands using nature-based solutions to improve the water quality coming off the highway. But then this is the wider catchment. Now this is really interesting. I hadn't realised this until I put this slide together. So this map shows you the Water Framework Directive status of the subcatchments of the Colne, according to the Environment Agency in 2019. You can see that in 2019, the Halberton stream was bad. Everywhere else is moderate. These two were poor. WFD status, by the way, if it's moderate, that means it's failing. It is failing what is expected of a water body. Even the next one up, good, is not really where they want it to be. There's a whole other step to where they should be, which is high. So these are all failing. Every single catchment here is failing on ecological reasons. Oh, we have David joining us. That's great. He's from South West Water. David, welcome.
Hello, Dominic. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm late. I had to get out of my day job.
Right. Okay. David, we've all done introductions. Can you give a quick introduction to yourself, just where you're from, what your interest is?
So here today is South West Water's Natural Resources Manager, also a resident in the Colne Valley. Brilliant.
Thank you. Really good to have you with us. We're just looking at WFD status of the Colne, and I was just explaining that this map is from the 2019 data, and you can see that most of the Colne is moderate, but in the 2022 assessments that have just been published, well, in the last few months, the Weaver and the Bollum have both turned bad. They are now red. The Ken and the Sheldon, you might not be able to see it too well, but I've circled those in cream, yellow. They have improved to moderate, and the Fulford is now failing at poor. And the Halberton is still bad. So we've got 3 subcatchments have deteriorated and 2 have improved slightly, but the Weaver and the Bollum have dropped a whole 2 steps in the framework assessment. This is for ecological status. And I don't know exactly how the EA have made those assessments, what data they've drawn on to make it, but it could be from fish surveys, it could be from invertebrate surveys, it could be from plants in the river, and it could be from water quality as well. But those are ecological assessments, which is alarming. Means we're going in the wrong direction across most of the majority of the catchment.
Dominic, I'm surprised to hear the Bollum has gone down so much. That is quite a shock, because when you walk in that valley, the river looks in pretty good nick generally. So, but the EA assessments are made on river life. I think you're right in that. It's because it's an ecological assessment. So it'll be kick sampling and things like that the assessments are based around.
Yes, and normally the headwaters are where we see the best quality ecology and water quality.
Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, it'd be good to see the detail, but over what time period is the assessment made? Is it snapshot in time, or is it long-term data that helps? I don't know enough detail about how the WFD is worked out, and I should do really. I understand.
Yeah, it's probably highly technical again, isn't it? But
yeah, we could do with somebody to help interpret it really, because we're somebody who's an expert on WFD assessments from the Environment Agency would be useful.
Yes, and funny enough, David, we were just commenting before you came on about Richard's been, looking at the data from the Killerton sonde, and we don't really understand what are the sort of thresholds that this machine is measuring. It's measuring a lot of data, but what are the thresholds that we should be getting alarmed about? So yes, we do want some technical input to help us navigate this whole area. So this National Highways project is targeting the Weaver, the Bollum, the Halberton, and Fulford water now, because those are the 4 most failing subcatchments. And what we've done, we have been able to appoint JBA Consulting. Now, JBA did our original flood modelling for the Colne, and they've now looking at water quality, and they are, this is just a snapshot of their tool. This is the Weaver subcatchment, and they use a range of modelling tools to identify the highest risk areas for pollutants entering the waterway from land, which is obviously the main place they come from. So it's important to state, so this helps target kind of research on the ground, and it's not a map of where there are failures. It's a map to help us guide investigations into the highest risk areas, because there might be very rapid drainage of water off the landscape, or there might be a type of land use there, perhaps a lot of maize, something like that, that could trigger a lot of pollution risk. So the next steps are at this stage is to do some ground truthing. They'll be walking the catchments and looking at some target areas here and seeing what kind of interventions we could get, we could persuade farmers to do, we could fund farmers to do, to help improve water quality in this priority catchment. Any thoughts on that? It's a piece of work going on, and you know, it's going to take change across multiple areas to get the column back to where it should be, but this is a good start, we feel.
Could I just say something?
Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, could I just earlier you described it as the highways water quality, national highways water quality, but
yeah,
the way you're describing it suggested it was much more than that. That we were looking at land use, and the other thing you said was they were focusing on the areas that are failing the worst. Well, they may be failing for reasons other than highways in a big way, agriculture or sewage issues. So why would you focus highway improvement on those areas? Surely we should be looking at what the contribution of the highway drainage is to water quality and focusing there.
Well, yes, so we are focusing on these two priority outfalls, and they probably half the money might be spent on those priority outfalls. But we're also persuading them, because they have this this environment fund, which has got a slightly broader remit than just the motorway. It looks at the corridor that it passes through and tries to enhance the quality of the wider landscape. And they're quite happy to support wider measures to improve water quality, not just those generated by the motorway. We have to make the case to them. It's probably very straightforward to make the case to them about the priority outfalls. That we should get that funding. Getting the funding for these wider farming interventions is a tougher slope to get up, but it's all part of the package that we put to them, and so far they've been happy to fund this feasibility study.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Lucy can talk a little bit about DRIP here. This is the map of her priority areas.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so DRIP stands for the Devon Resilience Innovation Project. It is funded, it is core Environment Agency money, but it is being hosted by Devon County Council. It covers the whole of Devon, but for us in the column, it covers these specific 6 subcatchments. They've been paired up, but they are specifically chosen from modelling that JBA have done, because they are classed as rapid response type catchments, which basically means that they are catchments that are flash floody, and generally, as a rule of thumb, when it rains, when we have a heavy rainfall, properties in those catchments will flood within half an hour. So I cover Colmstock and Hemyock. I cover the Lickham side of Hemyock, and the Colmstocks from the Beacon up to Hackpen, and then I cover Holberton, which is Stamford Peveril as well, and then Stratford West, which we now actually call the Liner, so Hockworthy and Holcombe Rogus, and then Gainsborough and the Weaver, so right down to Plymtree. So I spend my time visiting the landowners in these 6 catchments, working on nature-based solutions. It's a £400,000 project to spend over the next 4 years, and it was a 5-year project. We're in year 2, but the first year we didn't do any delivery, so we're actually out and about spending money now. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that what you're obviously tackling flash flooding, but by reducing the risk of that, we're also improving the chances of reducing soil erosion, for example, which can carry a lot of pollutants into the river. And nature-based solutions can also help tackle water quality as well as flooding. But it's quite interesting that you're covering the Weaver, and that's coming up as a priority for water quality as well.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Alberton.
The Weaver's quite a I would say, I feel when I visited it that it doesn't associate itself with the Colne as much as some of the other catchments. I've been to parish councils. I've been to Broadhenbury and to Plymtree, and Plymtree didn't even know why I was there, because they said, "Oh, we're in the cliffs, but it's nice of you to come." So it's definitely a quieter, in terms of public engagement. I would say it's much quieter as a catchment. Same with the Liner as well. The Liner is a very quiet catchment up in Holcombe Rogus. They, again, Hockworthy don't even realise they're in the catchment, most of them, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, John.
Sorry,
joining
Dominic,
us.
I was going to say something. I should put my hand up. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead, David.
I was just interested. You've got that catchment that comes down off Comstock Beacon to a degree, yes, but actually the risk runs all the way along that valley side between Hemyock and Comstock. I'm just wondered why you focus it on that, particularly because there's such a huge amount of gravels comes down off Comstock Beacon and hits that back road between Hemyock and Comstock.
Yeah.
Extraordinary amount of materials.
And that catchment, I think we call it the Millmore catchment, was originally in our brief, but we know, I think we just, in the end, we had to restrict it to 6, and we picked those 6. But yeah, the gravels on the Comstock to Hemyock Road are horrendous already. Yeah.
Welcome, John. Glad you've made it. We can even see you now. That's great. Thanks.
Hi there. So
hi.
I'm driving.
That's okay. We'll watch you nervously. So that's DRIP project, and the next one, I just wanted to update you on the Environment Agency Agricultural Regulatory Task Force. So the ART has put an officer into the Colne, and they've been visiting farms that have been targeted as being high risk, according to their whatever system they have for identifying that. So they visited a total of 45 farms in the Colne catchment, and they've made 54 inspections, Upper Colne, Middle Colne and Lower Colne. And the next slide actually shows you the result of those inspections. The red ones were non-compliant, green were compliant. So these are farms that are compliant with farming rules for water and SAFO. I imagine, Lucy, those are the 2 key things they're investigating. SAFO is the storage of slurries and fuels and fuel oils on farm.
Yeah, and did you say farming rules for water?
Yeah. Yeah. And that regulates how you apply manures to your land, how much livestock you have on your land, when you have them on there, etc., etc. So that's quite a lot of non-compliance. And I'll just go back to that previous slide. So 148 actions. I don't know what an action actually means. It probably means a formal request to the farmer to make a change to address the failure. And this agricultural regulatory task force also works quite closely with catchment sensitive farming, and we haven't got anyone from catchment sensitive farming, I'm afraid, here, but they will typically go in and to a farmer and help them with support them with making a funding application to sort out the problem where they're eligible, and that might be by helping them get into a countryside stewardship scheme, or it might help them to get funding to cover their yard so that slurry doesn't run off it. And I know David has a lot of experience of this from the upstream thinking program that he manages. I'm sure you'll have seen a lot of this kind of work going on farms.
Yeah, for sure. I'm interested to know what the rules around the application of CSF funding is, though. Can they spend that? I mean, we don't spend the upstream thinking money unless it's already meeting a regulatory standard, but can CSF be used to help the farmer get up to the regulatory standard?
I imagine not. I think that's a good point. I think that they're quite careful to say it's down to the farmer to sort that out. But Lucy, do you know any better?
I thought that they were there to help get up to regulatory standard, but because I visited with the catchment sensitive farming officer to quite a lot of places, and covering of silage clamps is something that they talk about regularly funding. So that would lead me to believe that if that is a regulatory demand, that they are funding to bring them up to regulation. It's probably best that we ask the catchment sensitive farming officer.
Yeah, there's an action to
yeah.
We want to get them around the table. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So that's interesting bit of data. This is just for 2020. I think this program started in 2022. So 2022 through to 23. Okay. And now just moving on to Sean, who's been.
Move on, Dominic. That last diagram says it all, really, to me. 80%, at a rough count, of all the farms visited were non-compliant. When you look at that, and then you take into account, the revelations that have come out in the last 12 months or so on sewage discharges, is it any wonder that the water quality in the Colne is declining? There's no surprises here. We can see what the causes are. It's not one person or one organisation, but across the board, there's non-compliance. And to add it to that, there's new stuff going on all the time. I commented on a planning application for an extension of poultry farming in the Upper Colne, and put in quite a detailed comment, because there appeared to be no provision whatsoever for dealing with the waste from the farming operation, other than following best practice guidance. And unbelievably to me, the Environment Agency did not even comment on the application. What hope have we got of improving matters on a catchment that's already failing, when the statutory undertakers don't appear interested?
Yeah, well, good question. David?
Sorry, I haven't got the answer, but I understand the point, and it's a point well made. I was going to say that your map doesn't show the seasonal risk or the ongoing risk. So in the last week, there's been maize contractors all over the Upper Colne Valley, and some really bad practice going on around that. A lot of mud on the roads, and etc. So I know farming has to go on, and I'm not trying to have a go at farmers particularly, but within that, every year there is a huge amount of soil damage and things, really poor practice that happens with contractors harvesting maize. And it has rained a lot the last few days, yet it was still happening yesterday. So that won't be picked up on this map at all yet. It is really, putting a huge amount of sediment into the river currently, as well as damaging the soils, which will just increase runoff from those catchments.
Yeah, thank you. Good point. Teresa?
Yeah, just a comment. I'm noticing that cluster of red dots particularly. That seems to be the whole of Colnestock, I think. My background's partly in behavioural science and medicine, and the biggest influence on people's behaviour often is what their neighbours are doing. And I think we've got, you know, you've got a culture there, haven't you, where it's clearly normal, you know, amongst a group, and people take comfort from the fact that everyone around them is doing the same thing. They haven't got a culture of following those regulations. And I don't know whether that's of any sort of help in terms of when we come to sort of trying to engage with people, and if we ever do, in terms of talking to them, you've got to think about it in terms of the, you know, the local culture and what's normalised, and how you know, just be aware of that when you try to tackle it.
Yeah, thank you. That's very valid. I think the culture in farming is a huge, is the biggest thing. Well, it's not the biggest thing. I mean, having an effective regulator is one necessary requirement. Having attractive funding packages to help farmers transition to more sustainable practices is another. But it is also a culture for a lot of farmers going out and having really tidy fields at the right time of year, nicely ploughed and tilled and looking smart, is really, really important to them. And that's what they've always done, and that's what they're, and they would feel ashamed if it looked any different, you know. And so that's, these sort of things are hard to break, and find change around. Yeah, these are big issues, and we'll come back to them, I'm sure. Sean, can we move on to your, just tell us about Devon Woods. It's great you could join us today.
Thanks, Dominic. Yes, so Devon Woods is a North Devon biosphere project, but it covers the whole of Devon. Well, it covers most of Devon. It's targeted at specific catchments that are failing various water quality issues. That are basically targeted specific catchments that have particularly got phosphate issues. So yeah, the aims of the project is basically, it's using woodland creation as a way to address water quality problems and to improve river habitats. And we try to offer a kind of a concept to delivery service. So we'll come out to sites, we'll discuss with landowners their aims for the sites, how woodland creation could fit into their land, and how we can use it to meet the objectives that they want, whether that is habitat creation, whether it's commercial timber production, carbon sequestration, or even just kind of amenity value and landscape amenity. We've got quite a range of partners that we work with, so the Forestry Commission, Natural England, National Trust, Wildlife Trust, the Environment Agency and the Woodland Trust. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is just showing the catchments that we are operating in. It's quite a few different catchments we're working in. The Tamar, the Torridge, Tor, Tean, Creedy and Exe, the Clist and the River Colne, and the Otter and the Axe. And then we have some that we are specifically targeting for this year and next year. But we were happy to take any landowner that basically that's interested within those catchments. We'll try and help. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Sean, that's the last slide.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to, I clipped out.
That's fine.
Just to get the overview. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say?
That's basically it anyway.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, we try to offer kind of a full, it's a free service from concept to delivery. We help with the funding applications, we help with the design of woodlands, and it's a real variety of woodlands. So it might be riparian buffers or shelter belts, or like I said, the kind of more commercial plantations if people want to do that.
Have you had much Much take up in the Colne yet?
Not so much in the Colne. We've got quite a few projects in the Clyst catchment. So we have got quite a few projects in East Devon, but less so in the Colne so far. But I think West Country Rivers Trust are offering a similar kind of service as us.
Right.
Devon's actually quite fortunate in that there are several different organisations trying to help landowners with woodland creation and water improvement works like this. So it might be that West Country Rivers Trust have got more projects than us in the Colne.
Oh well, we'll ask them. That sounds interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Basically, if you or anybody else is interested in woodland creation, yeah, feel free to get in touch. There's no obligations. It's completely free. Yeah, we're just basically trying to help create as much woodland and improve water quality where we can.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, isn't it? And anything we can do to help encourage take up, we will do. We'll get the word out there on the street.
Brilliant, thank you.
David.
Sean, do you have any funding beyond advice or said, you know, so you're providing a service to help trees get planted, but have you got any, I'm not sure where your funding comes from, but if you wanted to say, you know, how you set the project up, you know, where's the drivers and, you know, what, a bit more detail on what you offer.
Yeah, so it's Water Environment Improvement Fund. That's where our funding comes through from. So it's through the Environment Agency. But yeah, we basically help with the designing and the application to other funding sources. So the English Woodland Creation Offer is kind of the main funding pot that we go to help landowners create woodland. But there are other funds available for smaller scale woodland and tree planting projects. So there's More Woods from the Woodland Trust, and Devon Wildlife Trust have a Saving Devon's Treescape project, and there's a separate scheme for Dartmoor, South Devon and Plymouth, so they've got their own community forest trust that we just kind of signpost people to, really, because they can do a lot of the work we're doing as well.
Great, thanks, Sean. In the last half hour, I'm going to quickly move on to just a quick wrap up on what we did with our Connecting the Natural Capital of the Colne project, which is relevant to all this farming work. But this was a project that was trying to work out how we can bring in finance other than public sector finance to fund the work that needs to be done. The focus was on flooding, but actually it's also there are lots of other side benefits from flooding, including water quality and biodiversity, which may be fundable. We developed 23 farm plans, worked with 23 farmers to talk to them about the approach. We worked with FWAG Southwest actually to develop a natural capital assessment tool. FWAG Southwest did the farm plans as well, Anthony. And we also had discussions with fund holders, people in the city, major funders, and private enterprises to see how they might want to invest in the project. And that's a typical sort of showing where our flood opportunity map, flood risk reduction opportunity map overlaid with a particular farm, and where, you know, and we talked to that farmer about, well, which of these measures could you introduce on your farm? But as a result of all of that, we've started talking to the Environmental Farmers Group, and they are an organisation that's started in the sort of Hampshire area, and their focus is on helping farmers access green finance to protect and enhance nature for all these reasons. And they are this is where they operate at the moment. They have their core area is this green area. These orange sites are these are catchments, all river catchments. This one up in the northeast is also a equivalent partner. The orange ones are groups that are associated, and the red ones, which includes all the East Devon catchments, are interested, as in we as Connecting the Colne and the people who are running the River Axe project and the people who are working on the River Otter are all interested in working with the Environmental Farmers Group. What the EFG does is it recruits members from farmers, and they pay an amount per hectare for the size of their farm. And what they get from that is they become a part of the EFG collective. And the EFG then negotiates green finance deals on behalf of that collective of farmers. So one of the big problems for farmers is that they are individuals. They just maybe have a few hundred acres, and they can't attract, it's not enough to attract this kind of investment by itself. Only by collaborating and coming together can they access that sort of scale of investment. And the EFG does that for them. And so we're talking, there's great interest in us having a cell in the Connecting the Colne that would be all the farmers in the catchment who wanted to join, an invitation for them to join, and then we would hope that would ease the path to additional funding coming in to help deliver some of the work that's needed. Whether it's through biodiversity net gain, it could be through network rail funding for reducing flood risk. We're not a phosphate reduction catchment as under the nutrient neutrality rules, but that is being applied in other ones of these catchments. But certainly flooding and biodiversity net gain, and also in carbon credits, could also be accessed through this sort of group approach. So that's just gradually evolving. We're hoping to have a meeting with farmers in the catchment early next year and get this rolling. Any thoughts and questions? Okay, well, I think that's it for my slides. It is. I'll stop sharing. So, yeah, great. What I wanted to sort of have a more open discussion now, and some of the questions that have come up in the discussion as during the last hour, you know, we can come back to, and it is great to have David here, because that whole question of sewage works and how they're managed, spills and the rest does keep coming up. And we know that agricultural pollution is a huge impact on water quality in the river, but we also suspect that sewage effluent is also a major factor. So sorry to put you on the spot, but are you happy to just talk about South West Water's plans and
yeah, so
any other
several things. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you. First of all, I actually cut and pasted from the EA website what ecological status is into the chat, if you haven't seen that. So it's really interesting, that one, because it is biological elements mainly, but then supporting elements. So the hydromorphology, you know, if there's a weir that's in there, for example, which obviously there wouldn't be a new weir built in the Bollum, but that could be relevant historically. Ammonia, pH, phosphate. So it's not just the ecological factors that make up, but the important thing more that is, if one thing goes down, so if say and I did going back to kick samples, so if river ecology goes down, then the whole classification goes down to the lowest. So if one thing is moderate, the stretch is moderate. If one thing is poor, everything else is moderate or good, then it's still poor overall in its overall classification. So that's the way the system works in terms of those maps and those classifications.
Yeah, that's useful. Thank you.
Yeah, right. So South West Water, I should stress this is not my area of expertise, but I'll do my best. I'm not a wastewater manager or a wastewater operator or planner. So I manage the natural resources team. So we do, as Dominic said, the catchment management schemes. We also look after biodiversity on our own land holdings and think about invasive species as well, and fish passage. So that's my team. That fish passage and invasive species will be very much something that would affect the RAG status, the reasons for not achieving good, RNAG status in the language. Because, you know, if invasive species were up and down the river, that would bring it down, and there is a lot of balsam in some places in the Colne, so that could be a factor as well. So
also, actually, sorry to butt in, but signal crayfish are an issue in the Colne as well.
crayfish, of course, yeah. So there's a lot in that classification. You do really need to dig into it to get to the bottom of it. Right, so you may have noticed, everybody, that all water companies have been submitting their new investment plans. South West Water has done the same. So they're all now public on all water companies' websites. So you can go and see what the investment plans say. They're draft, they're not approved by Ofwat, but we all submitted them last Monday to Ofwat's deadline, and they are public documents. So if you go to South West Water's customer website, and then you can go to, I think there's a major header that says we're doing this, which takes you to the plan, and it's got a summary that shows you the plan priorities, and then there's a plan document, which is about 80-page document. There's a customer summary, which is much shorter, and then underneath that sort of tier 1 level document, there's loads of supporting documents, so you can go to all sorts of different tiers of documents. It's all there on the website. But we provide a vast amount of data tables to support that submission of the business plan, which is for 2025 to 30, I should say. That's the period it's for. So all those data tables are on there as well, and they contain different performance commitments and all sorts of different things. So upon some of the priorities, it's interesting in terms of maybe some of the priorities that are reducing leakage or increasing resilience in water supply as a result of the drought that went through. A huge focus on reducing impacts from storm overflows. So that's very much focus the investment plans that have been put forward. These investments will start from April the 1st, 2025, if approved by Ofwat in the current form. They'll come back to us in 6 months and say, you know, that's a good plan, that's a bad plan, and all that sort of process. We're already answering hundreds of questions a day from Ofwat as they review our plans. So it's an ongoing process. The overall investment is £2.8 billion. That's the capital investment. So that's not the cost of running the water company. That's the scale of the investment to address the investment needs in face of a changing climate, increasing population, increasing challenges from land management, and then also an increasingly educated and aware public who are understandably asking for change in terms of storm overflows in particular. So back to that, it's very heavy on investments to stop the harm from storm overflows, and commitments in that plan to reduce, I'm not going to say because I can't remember the numbers, but to reduce the impact of storm overflows periodically. So there's a plan now to do what we can in the next 2 years. There's a plan in that new investment plan to reduce a major percentage of harm from storm overflows by 2030. And I think the overall plan says in the next 10 years to eliminate harm from storm overflows overall. Alongside that plan, there's actually a long-term direction strategy that takes you up to 2040 or 50. So that's a document worth finding as well. And then the last thing was that we actually wanted to do more in terms of our investment plan. And we had a much bigger investment plan, which was way beyond the 2.8 billion. All water companies had that same ambition to do good for the environment. We have a process that we go through with the Environment Agency, telling us the things that they want us to do, and Natural England. We put those things into the plan with working with them, you know. So they say these are the problem areas, you must do something. We say, okay, that we understand, we'll do that. We built it up, but some of that is statutory, so it's must-dos. Some of it is statutory plus in their definition, which is kind of must-dos, but you need public and customer support, and you have to show that customer support. And then some of it is non-statutory, i.e. you don't have to do it. You can only get Ofwat approval to spend customers' money on it if you can really show that you have customer support for those things. So we've done a huge process of gathering that customer support and understanding for our new business plans. We've asked lots of customers what they want us to see us investing in. It's interesting that the same things are always the priorities, is safe, clean drinking water, wastewater that goes away, but always in the top 5 is environments. And how you ask the question obviously depends on how you get the answer. So if you ask the question, do you want farmers to look after the landscape, and do you want to use water company money to help support that, they would say it's in the top 15 priorities. But if you ask the question, should water companies help look after rivers or keep rivers clean, or should water companies prevent pollutions on bathing waters, that comes out much higher. So it's really dependent how you ask these questions and the answers you get. But it's always comes back to the environment is important for our customers, and we understand that, and we want to do good things for the environment. We have high ambitions in that area. The overall cost of all of these water companies, and we're not the biggest water company, business plans, was incredible. And the Treasury and DEFRA realised they'd set over a governance process that was putting a massive supply chain risk out there. And we were already running short of consultants to help us build the things we need, for example. So DEFRA and the government wrote to all water companies. There is a letter, it was leaked, you can find it on the internet, asking them to scale back the size of their investment and to only really do statutory things in that investment. We had to take that on board, so that's why we've landed at 2.8 billion rather than a higher figure. So some of the things I wanted to do in my team and delivery to the natural environment have dropped out of this plan, and they've been phased to the next plan, which is the 2030 to 35 plan, at the behest of the Secretary of State. It's not something I'm particularly happy with, but we nevertheless, the addressing the storm overflows was not something that was phased, so that remains in the plan. Addressing eel passage, fish passage, addressing screens on intakes for fish and eels, all statutory, all still in the plan. Addressing invasive species, all statutory and still in the plan. Catchment management schemes in drinking water protected areas, working with farmers. Some of those have been phased, but the CUM doesn't qualify for those anyway, because it's not a drinking water protected area. We don't take drinking water out of it. So you can see, some things have been affected, but overall, I don't think it's affected our investment in the CUM significantly, that phasing, disappointing as it was for other areas. So if you want to go and see that plan, go see it. And I mentioned something else in there as well. In the short term, because we've still got 18 months or so of the current plan to run, there is an action plan to address the priority wastewater, if you like, wastewater network issues now. So again, it's worth looking at that action plan to see if the CUM investments are in it. I don't know, actually. If I had more time today, I would have gone to that and looked at it to let you know. But you can see that plan, and then there's also another document you should look at, which is the drainage water management plan. So that's worth looking at as well, because that sets out very, very clearly what the investment is around drainage water and locations. Underneath that, there's a series of lower documents. So what you need is the document for your own area. So underneath the drainage water management plan for the company, you want a drainage water management plan for East Devon or whatever the catchment area is. I'll try and secure that. I don't know how public those documents are, because that's got the detail in it about what investments are happening where and when, and why that decision-making process, which is a rational decision-making process based on a risk basis process. So the highest risk, the highest spillers, the highest damage points, the ones that potentially causing the most ecological harm, will be the CSOs that are addressed first, either in the current cycle of investment or the next cycle investment, the lower risk ones will be the ones that are phased to future cycles of investment. And overall, and I guess this is important, it's an interesting, sometimes difficult thing for people to understand. There is a customer impact of all of this. So customer bills will go up, and it's on the website how much customer bills will go up by. I think it's in the region of £60 a year on your bill. I'm guessing, I'm aware this is being recorded, so I might be saying the wrong figure in that. So do go to that website again and see what that customer impact is, so that we get it right for the record. But if you think about how water companies are financed, they are water customers pay for everything. There is no government funding supporting the provision of clean water and drinking and wastewater services in the UK. Customers pay for everything. The only exception to that is South West customers get a £50 a year rebate on their bills because the government recognised you have, in terms of customer area, a much higher burden in terms of coastal bathing water and the measures needed to keep bathing waters clean. That if you think back to when water companies were first privatised in the 1980s, it was because of the overall cost of turning all those bathing waters, which used to be untreated outfalls from the old water authorities, the public authorities, into treatment. So the first thing that South West Water did was the programme called Clean Sweep, which changed all of those coastal systems from being untreated sewage going out in pipes into the sea, into treatments on the coast, which are now in place, and we have 98% compliance in bathing water because of that. That carried a huge investment cost that South West Water had to borrow from its investors, and that paying that investment back is still part of the customer bills, and that's why you get the £50 rebate, because the government recognised that we're paying for clean waters as a region, that in the summer we get twice as many people using who are non-residents or paying nothing effectively because of the tourists who come to the southwest to the clean beaches. So you in the southwest do get that £50 rebate currently that helps with your bills, but other than that, all water and sewage is provided by customers. So we have to accept that customers are going to pay for everything that happens, and therefore we have to balance our bills overall. So another reason for not doing everything straight away is that you can't put that burden onto customers all at once. So you have to phase your investments as well as the demand on the supply chain over a longer period of time. So hopefully when you look at that plan, you'll think, yes, it's a balanced plan in terms of the overall changes that are coming as a result of that plan. And it splits out where that extra investment has gone to, how much of it is going to building a new strategic reservoir, for example, at Cheddar, how much of it's going to be on storm overflow reductions, how much of it's going to be on putting more interconnectors between our existing reservoirs so we can move water more freely, etc., etc. So that's all set out in that plan as well. It's a big read, and appreciate there's a lot to get through. I'll stop now so people can ask questions.
Thanks, David. That was a very thorough run through of things. Yeah, questions, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to first of all thank you, David, for coming. One of the partners who's turned up and and hears it and can explain what your organisation is doing. Can I just explore something you said when you referred to investment being based on where you get, in effect, the best bang for your buck in assessing risk? And there were two separate issues or two separate criteria which you described. One was environmental impact and the other was impact on drinking water quality and the fact that the Culm isn't a drinking water catchment. Would I be wrong to assume that means that the Culm will not get the same attention as, say, the Exe or other catchments which do provide drinking water?
It never, yes, you're exactly right. So in that sense, I was talking about the wastewater investment and the ways that wastewater investment is prioritised. So it's the question of how much harm a CSO is doing, and if it's spilling very often, obviously it's a higher priority to stop that than one that doesn't spill very often, or perhaps one that spills and doesn't do much harm. It's all about the harm with CSOs, not necessarily how often they spill. So that was in the context I said that there's a very strict criteria for understanding and then prioritising investment. Then I went on to say that overall, some catchments have received high levels of investment from South West Water because we abstract water from them, and the Environment Agency says to us, yes, you can have a catchment scheme in that catchment. So, and the Culm, we don't take water from the Culm, so we've never been able to extend the upstream thinking programme to the Culm catchment.
I mean, since we're principally concerned with the Culm, it's a bit of a I know it's the reality of how water is provided in the catchment, but it does sort of places us as in the second tier, doesn't it, of environmental
and the Cliffs too as well. The Cliffs is another one that I would love to be able to do more for again, because it is great having a farm advisory service that operates. You look how the things we've done on the X, the main spine of the X, it's been fantastic.
I mean, I think it's, from my understanding of the investment plan, the South West Water are going to target CSOs that spill frequently. I can't remember what the threshold is. It might be 20 times a year. Anything but more than 20 times a year will be in the priority sort of tranche. And many CSOs in the Culm spill more frequently than that. So I think there will be investment in the Culm because those South West Water have said that they will tackle those. And the other thing that's, I believe, is in their plans is identifying waste water treatment works that are at risk from surface water flooding and get inundated in storm events, and then they surcharge into the river. And so and that's just one of the reasons why they might invest in wastewater treatment works, but as well as population growth. But I know that there are quite a few wastewater treatment works in the Culm catchment that were talked about being included in the investment plan. And I think we need to find out if they are still in there, and also what this threshold for CSOs is.
Do read those documents, the drainage water management plan and the main business plan. There are some very high level maps in there with dots on, so you might be able to just work that out from the dots. And as I say, what I'll try and do is secure the more detailed plan for your region, this region, so that we can share that. It's not on the website, that's why I'm just not able to point it to you, which makes me slightly wonder whether it's a public document or not. So that's why I wasn't able to bring it along, but I'll find out. If it's not a public document, we can probably extract the data from it and share it with you anyway, Dominic, for everybody to understand. Well, it's good information.
Yeah, that would be an excellent.
Just a couple more things to add, just to say that we do now have people who in the company are much better at this than me, who regularly go around groups and communicate with them. And that, I think maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, you had Mark Worsfold come, who was a director. We now have people who have skills in working with communities and communicating with communities who really understand what the investments are, and they've got time to go and gather that information and bring it to you and discuss it properly. So I think if you can get hold of one of those people to come to your group and just bring that information and talk you through it, that would be really useful. So I think that's what Mark wasn't able to do a year ago when he came, because he could only talk about high level future plans, and now we've moved past that stage into actually understanding the detail of the plan. So I'll be keen to try and get, so that's another action I'll take away. I'll try and speak to Charlotte and get her to come and talk to your next event if she can. She's great, by the way, so I hope she'll say yeah.
That's brilliant, David. Thank you.
Yeah, the second thing is that I didn't mention in terms of Richard's questions, just reminded me, in the drainage water management plan, there's an additional piece, if you like, an add-on at the end that's specifically put in there, which is called kind of the green first strategy, which is to say that we will look where investment is needed, and exactly what you said, Dominic, to stop floodwater from overwhelming wastewater treatment. If it's possible to say, okay, actually this is a catchment derived problem, it's not a wastewater treatment problem, it's actually there's too much water coming off the hills into the catchment and through the Southwest Water Network. So the first way of addressing that will be, what can we do in the catchment? So there now should be a presumption to apply that thinking to any investment going forward, and to look for the green first solution. What's the nature-based solution? What's the landscape solution? Rather than going straight to the traditional solution, which is build a big tank to store the stormwater. So hopefully that should begin to show change in the way that we help, and it's applying the same things that the Upstream Thinking Programme has been doing for years in other catchments. Good soil management, flood risk management in the landscape, helping farmers not to, as I said, plough maize, harvest maize during wet weather.
Sure.
All of those things,
Yeah. Richard, is that a hand raised for more question, or just a legacy hand? Okay, legacy, it looks like. Okay. Where that's been useful. Thank you, David. And I think we've got some data that we want to understand better. We've got access now to the Killerton sonde data, and it would be great to have access to Southwest Water's data on spills. I mean, I don't know if anybody, by the way, knows about this website. I'll just bring it up. So this is the Rivers Trust. I'll put the link in the chat and then you can have it. But you can, they've got all the spill data from 2022 here. And you click on one of these. This is, let's zoom in. This is below Bradninch. And that's a wastewater treatment works. And it's spilled 52 times for 744 hours in 2022. And you go up the catchment and there are the size of the blob tells you the size of the problem. So it's very, very thorough website. It's very useful for understanding what's going on. These are all treated sewage discharges, these little squares, and the browns are storm overflows. So yeah, do check that out. And but what would be great would be to be able to get this data, which the water company has and has also shared with the Rivers Trust, but get the timing of it. And this is what Professor Hammond had accessed from the River Windrush and correlated it with things like the sonde result, the sonde data that we've got. And you can see then how, I'm getting the echo again. Sorry, Tim, it might be your mic. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, you can see then how the maybe you get spills in dry weather, which is not supposed to happen, and that might correspond with a spike in various water quality indicators. Tim, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to pick up on what you've just said, I've looked at a couple of years of not quite daily spillage data for the Sanford Peveril wastewater treatment works. Not entirely easy to make head or tail of it. I've tried to put it together with Richard's rainfall data, and it looks mainly like sort of storm overflow, but it is quite hard to know whether there's any dry spillage in there at all. So I think if we can get more detailed data, for data probably for every day rather than some bulk data, then we would have a better idea just whether, you know, it's pass or fail. But there's clearly quite a lot of spillage, relatively. Not the worst I've seen in Devon, because I've seen a much worse one at Black Orton down in the Slapton catchments. But nevertheless, I think the more data that South West Water can release to this group, or at least to the project, the better we should be able to understand what's going on. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah,
I've never
sort
tried
that
to get this
out,
data.
so yeah, I can see. So data spills and time of spills, if that data is available. Yeah,
that'd be wonderful. I think historically groups like this have had trouble getting hold of that data.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
if there's a more transparent,
you shouldn't. You should be able to make an environmental information request for it. But let me see if I can get it directly to you without going through that process first.
Thank you so much. That's a brilliant offer.
Yeah. Could you pan right on your map, east?
Can you? Sorry. Oh, pan right. Yes.
So go to the east.
Yeah. Hemyock.
Yeah. No. So I was thinking about the Bollum, really.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we were talking about the Bollum, weren't we? Why the reasons why it's gone down. But there aren't any up there. Churchingford's on the main river, isn't it?
Oh, so Bollum's up here somewhere.
Yeah. There's maybe a couple up there.
These are soakaways and not water company. I mean, yes, there could be septic tanks, private domestic septic tanks that are contributing, and we know that's a potential risk. But I think that one of the interesting things that Richard's recording is that phosphate levels in the river are relatively low above Hemyock, and below Hemyock they're suddenly spike.
Yeah. And
also the Riverfly data shows a massive drop in quality, and that does point a finger of suspicion at the Hemyock works. But this is saying that it only spilled 4 times last year. You have to remember that last year was a very dry year. 22 was the big drought, and so most of these spill data from previous years was a lot higher. It tends to have depressed the numbers across the board.
Yeah, is Hemyock sewage treatment works? Does it fail its permit, or I think probably not, because I've not heard that, but it will have a permitted discharge. It's allowed to discharge for phosphate in the final effluent, which are pretty low generally, those permitted levels that the Environment Agency sets.
Yes, it's a real puzzle why we're getting that drop, because if it's not having too many spills and it's complying with its permit, you'd have thought there must be something else creating the problem there. The other issue I'm really interested in actually on the Culm is the paper mills, and I don't know how to access information about the permits that they have. Is that publicly available? Because they are pretty big industrial operations using a lot of water.
Possibly not, because they're not a regulated public company, so you'd have to ask the EA.
Yeah. But Mike, you mentioned earlier that there's been a problem at Ufcombe. Can you elaborate on that? I'm sorry to keep this meeting going. Are people happy to keep going for a bit? We've overrun. Do feel free to go. I'm sure you will. But yeah, I'm happy to stay on as long as people want to.
Sorry, I don't know enough about it really, but I think there was a pipe breakage at the under the bridge somewhere prior to the sewer pipe which went into the river, but I'm not sure about that, and please don't quote me on that.
Okay, fair enough.
But they then put pipes over the top of the bridge, and there has been for the last few months or weeks anyway over the pipe on the road, yes, the sewage pipe, 2 sewage pipes over the top of the bridge. And
was this at Ofcom? At Ofcom?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. I think that's right. Down
below Cold Harbour Mill.
Because the road was closed. Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and I live down that road.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
So David, you've made lots of very useful offers. Thank you. We've got those noted as actions. I think we've also going to link up with the PhD students who are working on the Killerton sonde and try and access their skills. And Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, just to say that I may be able to help with that because I'm technically a visiting professor in geography at Bristol, as well as civil engineering. I don't know Liz Bagshaw, but I know other folk in both geography and civil engineering. So I'll contact Liz, and who I don't know, and make contact and see what help I can be locally to her and the PhD students. But I'd had hoped we'd have some master's students from civil engineering, but their numbers have fallen quite considerably since COVID, and my supervision and suggested projects haven't been needed. But I'll see what I can do to help with that anyway. Happy to do so.
Thank you so much, Tim. That's going to be helpful. I'm sure they'll appreciate that. And yeah, Lucy's going to share the details, and we'll follow that thread up.
Yeah,
anything else?
If Lucy wants to get in touch with me, then please do out of the meeting.
Okay.
Anything else that we just want to go back to as actions?
Dominic, you have a hand up.
Oh, Teresa, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you, David.
It's okay. Yeah, it's just a thought I had. Have we done any mapping, or do we think it's worthwhile doing any mapping of intensive livestock or poultry operations that are in the catchment to see if they're having any influence? Just thinking about the poor quality in the Halberton catchment bit, and in fact I'm aware of some developments there around, you know, intensive cattle feedlots and so on.
That's a good question. I can't. Can you mute again, Teresa? Sorry. Just got that awful echo. That's better. Yes, it's frustrating that we've tried to get data on livestock numbers that is held by the Environment Agency, but they can't share it with us. They can't share it outside the organisation. It really is bonkers that we have a system that doesn't allow us access to like just basic data like that, which could easily be provided at a resolution that didn't target a particular farm. It would just indicate where the key problems are. So yeah, I don't know how we would actually go about getting hold of that data, but we could keep putting pressure on people to provide it in a form that is acceptable, doesn't break GDPR regulations. But it's certainly something we've tried to get hold of. Thanks, Mike. Glad you could make it along. We'll keep in touch. Yeah, I mean, do you think, Teresa, are you suggesting possibly even going out on the ground and doing some hoofing around?
Well, given what you've just said about the difficulty of getting any sort of official data, I guess that brings us back to local knowledge and the fact that we've got, you know, people who care and are interested. And in most of the areas, I mean, particularly in Halberton, where there's been that development, I know there's a lot of local concern. So I guess, you know, there is a possibility there, isn't there, just of using local networks. People know where things are, I guess, on the ground. Just a thought. I don't have a specific proposal, I'm sorry, but it was just something that occurred to me. might be worthwhile thinking about, you know, what we've learned about the impact of poultry farm discharges on the River Wye and the difficulties they've had there in getting planning to look at the, you know, look at the situation in the round rather than just looking at individual cases when they go to planning. So don't know if anyone knows more about that than I do.
Go ahead, Richard.
Thanks, Dominic. Could we try to get the EA to come along to our next meeting? Because so many of the issues we've been discussing this evening go back to them, whether it be regulation or Water Framework Directive or releasing information on what is actually happening in the catchment. And they just seem to be keeping their head down at the moment. And, you know, full credit to David for coming. But where's the EA? They're signed up partner to this project.
Yes, they are, and they're terribly stretched. And the catchment coordinator was informed about the meeting, but not till quite late in the day. So to be fair, he wasn't able to make it. But Alex Swan, who is the catchment coordinator, would perhaps be able to come, but he's not the technical expert, and I think it's the technical side of the team that we need. And those people are really hard to winkle out. But yeah, it's a good call, and I'll see if Alex can help point us towards the right people in the right teams. But we had someone who was early on got involved in the water quality working group. He's now working for South West Water. So sadly, we lost him. He got poached. But yeah, I think that's a good call, and I'll follow that through, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think that's about it. Thanks so much for your time and input. Really appreciated. And when do you think would be a good moment to meet again? I was thinking maybe a couple of months' time and see, maybe just try and get it in before Christmas. See if we could get people in the space for then, and see if we've been able to make any progress on some of these actions. Or into the new year, what do you think?
I think you're going to be tight getting it done before Christmas. So that's 6 weeks, isn't it?
That's true.
Oh no, I guess it is 8 weeks.
It's 8 weeks, but everyone's winding right back down. But you never know.
Yeah.
A festive water quality meet. Yeah. Okay.
I think the new year, maybe the new year.
Yeah, I think the new year.
I'm not keen to have too many meetings ever, but yeah, this is a good meeting. So yeah, the new year.
And also to give a chance for other people to be able to fit it into their diaries. We've mentioned a couple of people who we'd like to get along. So yeah, to give time for that to happen. Okay, well, I'll try and I'll float a date in sort of mid-January, and that's 3 months' time. And I'll be in touch. We'll share this recording link. I'll share Richard's useful papers and some notes from the meeting. I'll send them around. Thanks a lot, everybody. Really great that you came along.
Thanks, Dominic.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.